Christendom is the realm of sectarian activity dominated by religions that claim to be Christian. Christianity refers to the original form of worship and access to God taught by Jesus Christ. According to the sources of modern atheism, God is less and less a concern as people go through their days and make their decisions. In other words, forgotten. Arnold Toynbee said in his books, A Historian's Approach to Religion, quote, "In this mysterious universe, there is one thing of which man can feel certain. Man himself is certainly not the greatest spiritual presence in the universe. There is a presence in the universe that is spiritually greater than man himself. Man's goal is to seek communion with the presence behind the phenomena and to seek it with the aim of bringing himself into harmony with this absolute spiritual reality." The history of Christendom, marked by wars, inquisition, and moral decay, often serves as a barrier to those seeking the true teachings of Jesus. Devout Muslims and others point to the hypocrisy and decadence of Christian nations as a reason to reject the faith entirely. However, historical evidence suggests a vast divide between modern standards and original Christianity. As Professor Elaine Pagels noted, early Christians were defined by their strict moral restraint, rejecting common practices like polygamy, divorce, and extramarital relations.
Saan ka galing? Mag-inumaga ka na.
Tumigil ka nga!
Anong tumigil? Anong kinis mark sa leg mo?
Wala nga!
Anong wala?
This raises critical questions. Is the checkered history of Christendom a fair reflection of Jesus Christ? To find the truth, one must look past the actions of Christian nations and examine the man himself. Was he the promised Messiah? And did his actual life and teachings truly bring humanity closer to God? The Bible account tells us that Jesus was reared as a normal Jewish youth of his time, attending the local synagogue and the temple in Jerusalem. Raised as a normal Jewish youth, Jesus began his public ministry at the age of 30, after being baptized by his cousin John. Unlike many modern preachers, Jesus avoided emotional manipulation and hellfire tactics, choosing instead to reach the heart and mind through simple logic and everyday parables.
Ngayon, ibabahagi ko sa inyo ang kwento ng isang mabuting Samaritan.
Jesus, turuan niyo po kaming manalangin gaya ng pagtuturo ni Juan.
Manalangin kayo ng ganito.
His Sermon on the Mount and his model prayer established clear priorities, putting the sanctification of God's name first. Through his life, Jesus personally practiced humility and compassion, culminating in his hours with his disciples. The essence of his teachings is self-sacrificing love based on principle.
Anak, tumayo ka dyan at lumakad.
A standard that requires loving even one's enemies while rejecting their evil works. While many view Jesus' teachings as a philosophy similar to those of Confucius or Lao Tzu, his message went beyond ethics. Unlike the Buddha, who taught that salvation is achieved through personal enlightenment and knowledge, Jesus identified God as the sole source of salvation. By perfectly reflecting his Father's love, Jesus acted as a beacon of light, drawing people back to Jehovah. He described himself as the way, the truth, and the life, emphasizing that his role was to lead humanity into a direct relationship with God. Ultimately, Jesus' presence on the earth provided the momentum for mankind's search for God, proving that through him, people could find the truth and be reconciled with their Creator.
In the past, faith in God was a social requirement in the Western world, and public doubt was often met with censure. Today, the situation has reversed. Strong religious conviction is often viewed as narrow-minded or fanatical.
Ay, pasensya na po, di ko tiniwala.
In this post-Christian era, indifference has replaced devotion, and many have abandoned the search for God due to atheism and uncertainty.
Naniniwala ka ba sa Panginoon?
Hindi. Naniniwala ba ako sa science? Evident.
The 16th century Protestant Reformation, famously sparked by the German theologian and reformer Martin Luther, fundamentally transformed the Western world's view of authority. By challenging the established church, Luther served as the catalyst for a movement that reformulated basic Christian tenets and permanently divided Western Christendom between Roman Catholicism and New Protestant tradition. This shift replaced long-standing habits of conformity and submission with a spirit of self-assertion and freedom of expression. While most people remain within a religious framework, the movement's successful challenge to papal authority encouraged others to move along more radical lines. Some began questioning the core dogmas of the established churches, while others, noting the role of religion in historical wars and injustices, became skeptical of faith altogether. By the early 17th century, contemporary reports suggested that society was split amongst Papists, atheists, and Protestants, with some loose estimates claiming as many as 50,000 atheists in Paris by 1623. The intellectual door opened by Luther led to a revolution that extended far beyond church reform. As Will and Ariel Durant noted in The Story of Civilization, the Reformation brought those who challenged all established religions into the open. The thinkers of Europe, the vanguard of the continental mind, were no longer merely debating the authority of the Pope. They have progressed to debating the very existence of God. The eternal fragmentation of the Reformation, the rise of science, philosophy, and secularism further eroded the authority of Christendom. Scientific advancements directly challenged church doctrines based on literal biblical interpretations. For instance, the astronomical findings of the Copernicus and Galileo dismantled the geocentric view that the Earth was the center of the universe. Furthermore, as natural laws began to explain phenomena like lightning and comets, the need for divine intervention or miracles has explanations vanished, leading many to view religion as outdated compared to the burgeoning sacred cow of science. A significant blow, however, came in 1859 with Charles Darwin's Origin of Species. His theory of evolution presented a direct challenge to the biblical account of creation. While the clergy initially denounced Darwin, the opposition quickly crumbled, seeking to remain relevant. Many religious leaders eventually claimed that evolution was compatible with Scripture. By yielding to scientific pressure rather than defending biblical tradition, Christendom inadvertently undermined its own foundation of faith. As the 19th century progressed, critics like Ludwig Feuerbach, Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, and Friedrich Nietzsche moved beyond attacking church failings to questioning the very necessity of God. They introduced influential theories viewing God as mere projection of human imagination, religion as the opium of the people, or declaring that God is dead. These philosophical and psychological arguments offered an articulate voice to existing doubts, leading many to abandon traditional dogmas in favor of these new truths.
These are the new truths.
Belief in God has historically been based on two books, the natural world, creation, and the Bible. For millennia, these have inspired everyone from ancient kings to modern astronauts to see the universe as an intentional design.
Saan kaya nanggaling lahat ng bagay?
Today, critics attack both.
Ang galing mo talaga na nagagawa ng sensya.
They argue that scientific study proves life arose through blind chance and evolution, rendering a creator unnecessary. They further dismiss the Bible as an illogical, outdated relic. By rejecting both nature and scripture, they claim there is no longer any basis for faith. This raises the ultimate question. Does the evidence actually support this skepticism? Without a creator, life would depend on a series of extraordinary accidents. The chance origin of life requires the perfect alignment of chemicals, temperature, and pressure, repeated thousands of times. Given the universe's extreme precision, well, life would be impossible if certain factors were off by a tiny fraction. This complexity points away from blind chance and towards intelligent design. As the Bible suggests in Romans and Isaiah, the intricate purpose seen in nature serves as evidence of an intelligent creator. Ultimately, many people abandon their search for God, not because they've disproved the Bible, but because they are repelled by the failings of organized religion. As French writer P. Valadier observed, Christian tradition produced atheism. By presenting an unbelievable version of God that effectively killed faith in the consciousness of man.
Tahimik na yan! Nakakalit ng bahay! Mag-iis ka nga!
Ano ba ginagawa ko?
Sumasagot ka ba?
Tama na! Ano ba? Tama na! Ah!
However, as the Apostle Paul argues in Romans chapter 3, verses 3 to 4, the lack of faith in some does not diminish the faithfulness of God. Despite the failures of institutions or the skepticism of individuals, there remain every reason to search for the true God and discover what the future holds for humanity. For thousands of years, mankind has searched for an absolute spiritual reality, giving it various names across different faiths. However, the Bible identifies this reality as a living personality with a specific name, Jehovah, as the creator of the earth and humanity. He distinguishes himself as the only true God, capable of both making the earth and foretelling its future. With such a reliable source of prophecy, we can understand the destiny of the world's religion and political systems. The Bible reveals that the God of this system, Satan, has used a multitude of religions to blind people from the truth and the glorious good news about the Christ. By looking into the Bible's promises rather than current world conditions, we can find answers to the Earth's ultimate fate, moving past pollution and ruin towards a total regeneration of the planet and the human race. In 96 CE, the Apostle John received a vision of the island of Patmos. Depicting a gaudy, brash harlot known as Babylon the Great. This symbolic figure, described as being drunk with the blood of holy witnesses, represents the major global force during the time of the end. Her identity is unmasked through a logical process of elimination based on the biblical text. Because the kings of the earth commit fornication with her, she cannot represent the world's political ruling elements. Similarly, because of the traveling merchants of the earth growing rich through her shameless luxury, she cannot be the global commercial or business system. In commerce ruled out, the remaining principal element that fits the description of sitting over peoples and nations while misleading them through spiritistic practices is the global empire of false religion. Babylon the Great serves a composite symbol for all religion entities that divert attention from the true God Jehovah. This identification is confirmed by the common threads found throughout the world's religion, such as belief in an immortal soul, hellfire, and pagan triads. By promoting these demon-inspired doctrines, Satan uses this entire world of false religion to keep mankind in a state of spiritual confusion. The book of Revelation foretells the destruction of Babylon the Great, the global empire of false religion. This destruction occurs when a political element, symbolized by the 10 horns of a scarlet-colored wild beast, turns against religious systems. According to the prophecy, God executes judgment because these religions have committed spiritual fornication by meddling in politics and sharing responsibility for the blood spilled in nationalistic wars. Because this judgment is certain, the Bible issues an urgent warning to get out of her. To avoid sharing in her sins and resulting plagues. This divine injunction calls for individuals to separate themselves from false religion organizations and align with true worship before the political elements perform God's will while devastating the symbolic harlot. States that the destruction of Babylon the Great will occur swiftly as if in one day, ushering in a great tribulation that culminates in the Battle of Armageddon. This event will lead to the end of Satan's political system. And the dawn of a righteous new world. Through the day of judgment arrives unexpectedly like a thief in the night. The global pursuit of peace and security serves as a key signal that this execution is near.
Dito ka na nung bili mo sa akin. Thank you.
In a world obsessed with transient material values, the Apostle John warns that the desire of the flesh and of the showy display of one's mien are passing away. Because the world is temporary, the only way to remain forever is to reject the love of the world and focus on doing the will of God. Choosing the Father's love over material pursuits ensues a place in the lasting world to come. The original purpose for an obedient human family to live forever in an earthly paradise remains unchanged despite Satan's interference. According to the scriptures, God will soon bring ruin to those ruining the planet. This judgment will not result in a destroyed, polluted planet, but rather it will restore the earth to its intended state.
Ate? Jess, andyan ka pala? Ate?
A clean, balanced, and enduring paradise. Having reached a state of near ruin in modern times, the earth is poised for this divine protection and renewal, fulfilling the promise that the righteous will reside upon it forever.